Hello, creative people! Welcome to our channel. Today, we are going to talk about watercolor paper types. If you enjoyed today's video topic, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and check the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos from the channel. There is a new video every week. We cannot talk about watercolor without first knowing the basics about watercolor paper. The type of paper you choose dictates the behavior of the paint. This is because, depending on the paper used, we can manipulate the drying of the watercolor to create incredible effects. So let's understand a little bit about paper. We have here cold press papers, which are the most popular and versatile papers in the art world. It is not totally smooth. It has a slightly rough texture, full of small peaks and valleys on the surface. This texture reflects light softly. Because of the micro crevices on the surface, the water does not slide off the paper easily. It stays trapped in these micro textures, which allows us absolute control over water and drying. Here we are with the hahnemühle Cézanne 300 GSM. It is a cold press 100% cotton paper. It has a fine grain. It's a professional watercolor paper made of 100% cotton. It's not a smooth paper. It has small depressions on the surface. Because it is 100% cotton and cold-pressed, the water is absorbed slowly and evenly, and the pigment floats on the surface of the paper, allowing for a perfect gradient and controllable washes. So it is a paper used and recommended for wet techniques. Watercolor primarily. It's excellent, everyone, and it also has a very good price-to-quality ratio. Now let's talk about another paper that I really like, which is the canson montval 300 GSM. It is also cold press. This paper has a medium texture and is traditional for watercolor. This texture reflects light very well and helps create the classic effects of granulation and paint transparency. I don't know if you can see it there, but it is a texture very similar to the texture of cotton paper. Since it is a paper made for watercolor with a noticeable relief, it's not ideal for precise lines in India ink. In other words, it's not good for India ink. If you try to make an outline, it will also end up with those shaky strokes. Now, for wet techniques, it shines. It's 100% cellulose and heavyweight, that is 300 GSM. It's an excellent paper for watercolor. It holds water very well, allows for corrections, and is excellent for gouache, acrylic, and watercolor. I use it a lot. It's worth buying the 100 sheet pack, which is much cheaper than buying them in 12 packs. It's a paper I highly recommend. Well, now we have that classic canson sketchbook. This paper is also considered cold press. It's quite cheap. It's a medium texture paper. Its reliefs are also noticeable, and it's not ideal for precise lines in India ink. Do you know what the best part is? On one side, it has these grooves that allow us to do watercolor, but on the reverse side, it's smooth, meaning it's double-sided. So yes, you can do India ink, or colored pencil, or whatever you prefer. It's a watercolor pad used mainly for studies. It's very good. I use it quite a lot for study purposes. We have another cold press paper here, Filiperson. It's a student line. It has a fine-grained surface from the Filipaper Renault line, and it behaves and possesses the characteristics of a cold press paper, although it is not written cold press anywhere here. It is officially classified by the brand as having a fine texture. It has a slight roughness. Because it is a fine-pressed paper, it retains water better and allows for creating wet washes and pigment expansion effects. If you're looking for a paper to make very clean line strokes and highly detailed illustrations with fine pens, its texture might get in the way because it causes the strokes to be shaky due to the grain. However, for wet techniques, it can be used as a quick sketch with watercolor, watercolor pencils, and gouache. And it's a very cheap paper. So I think for that type of quick watercolor sketch proposal, it behaves very well. Another cold press paper, this one from canson C a grain, 224 GSM. It is also a cold press paper, although it is not written cold press on the cover at any time. But as it says it's grained, usually grained papers are cold pressed. It was developed precisely for artists who want a slightly granulated texture, moving away from the totally smooth surface that hot press paper usually has. It works well in practice, as it has a subtle relief on the surface, but it's not quite as rough or coarse as a thick cotton watercolor paper. But it has surface tooth sufficiently sharp to create effects of depth and shading. If your focus is to make art only with fine lines and black outlines, it will offer slight resistance due to the texture. The India ink pen will not slide on it as if it were glass, so it will create small granulations. The great advantage of the 224 GSM texture is combining the fine grain that accepts dry techniques like pencil, charcoal, and pastel pencils impeccably, and it handles a little moisture, gouache, India ink, and a little watercolor water without wrinkling or peeling the paper's texture. So it's a very good paper for those who use dry pastel chalk, charcoal, or pencil. It's very good because the small roughness it has is enough to scrape the pigment from the colored pencil or watercolor pencil and fix it on the paper. This here is the canson paper in the cream case 180 GSM, which is also cold press. It has a slight texture. It's a thinner paper than the 240 and much thinner than the 300. Generally, the line of canson 140, 80, 180, and 200 GSM papers from this traditional drawing line has the famous eggshell texture, a very fine granulation. What changes between them is the paper weight. One is thinner than the other and handles more water than the other. It's not a totally smooth paper, it's slightly rough. If you're using India ink pens or markers, it will not make those clean lines as if you were passing over glass because of the small grooves. The stroke might not be perfectly straight if you move the pen very slowly, as it will follow the surface of the sheet, which is slightly rough. It's an excellent paper for sketches made with colored pencil, graphite, or charcoal precisely because it has these micro grooves that we can perceive. It scrapes the graphite well and holds the pigment. This is a canson cream 200 grams per square meter. It will be exactly the same, but will change in it, this paper is huge, is the weight. But again, it will have this slight eggshell finish. It is excellent due to its roughness for sketching with oil pastel, dry pastel, colored pencil, and India ink, as long as you don't mind the small roughness. It is a good paper. It is a versatility that you, if you do all these techniques, should have in your studio. Now, let's go to the most common canson block, cold press. It has a very clear roughness. I think you can observe it. It is excellent for sketching. It is 100% cellulose paper. It dries very quickly. We can't really do big watercolor works on it, but it is a good paper for study. Because it is 300 grams per square meter, it handles the water surface and ink markers well, without wrinkling. Although the deep grain causes the water and pigment to penetrate into that region of grooves, creating spots, and many people don't like it. I use it more to do color studies. I barely even use it to sketch because it has these granulations. Now, the hot press paper, which is called hot press. These papers go through a manufacturing process where the sheets are squeezed and pressed on a heated metal roller under pressure. This makes the paper perfectly smooth.
Here we have a Van Gogh block. It is a 150 GSM sketchbook. It is equivalent to a hot press paper because it is totally smooth. It has satin-like paper, completely smooth. I don't know if you can see it on the camera. As the surface is completely smooth and has no texture, the India ink pen slides without any mechanical resistance, making precise and clean strokes. It accepts graphite, colored pencil, India ink. Because it is too smooth, it does not scrape much of the graphite and colored pencil pigment, which can make shading a little more difficult to do. If you are working with illustrations focused on clean strokes with India ink or sketch, it is an ideal paper. It is a perfect block. I use it a lot to do studies, drawings themselves.
Here we have a very cheap paper, which is white art powder, which is also considered a hot press paper, although it is not written anywhere on the packaging here. But because it is a smooth paper, it is considered a technical artistic paper with a very smooth and satin surface. As the surface of this paper is completely flat, smooth, and has no texture, it also accepts the India ink pen sliding perfectly. It accepts colored pencil, graphite technique, but again, because it is completely smooth, it does not scrape the pigments of the material we are using very well, making shading a little difficult. If you are working with illustration focused on India ink, it will make super clean strokes in India ink. There is another type of paper that I don't have here in the studio because I don't use it much, which is the extremely rough. This paper has a deep and striking texture, much deeper than the ones I showed earlier. It is much rougher. I will put photographs for you to see. Because they have this roughness, the water dries more slowly, creating ease for those who work with it. The pigment accumulates in these roughnesses of the paper, creating a granulated effect and a very rustic and beautiful effect. For those who like to paint landscapes, stone textures, trunks, trees, dry brush techniques, it is a perfect paper. It is much more expensive because it is large grain paper, generally very rough and almost 100% cotton. The most common brand found in the cellulose market is Ceramic Watercolor Rough 300 GSM. The Canson Montval Torchon 270 GSM, this paper is interesting, this Montval 270 Torchon, because it has the rough texture that mimics handmade paper. This is very cool, and its price is not as expensive as 100% cotton. We also have mixed paper, which is Canson 300 GSM Watercolor Grain Torchon, 60% cotton and 40% cellulose. In addition, we have the super rough paper totally made of cotton, Fabriano Artistico Rough 300G, the hahnemühle Cézanne Torchon Rough, William Turner Rough 300G, and the Arches Grain Torchon also 300 GSM. Why did I talk about paper? Because depending on the paper you use, you can manipulate the watercolors drying to create incredible visual effects. So paper is the most important thing when we are going to talk about watercolor. When you go to work and test your textures in watercolor, in addition to testing on cellulose paper, also test on cotton paper, because the salt or rice or alcohol you use will give one effect on cellulose paper and another effect on 100% cotton. It is not worth testing on hot press papers because besides them not being as water resistant, they also have very fine granulation. I hope you liked this tutorial and that you feel inspired to create your own watercolors. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new video that I post every week. If you have any questions or suggestions, leave them in the comments. Take the opportunity and tell me if you are already familiar with all these types of paper and which paper you use at home. See you next time, and thank you for watching the video until the end. Bye! Enjoy! They're still free for Prime and Kindle Unlimited subscribers.